Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Bruyette. My blog is drvetsonia.com. I do a lot of veterinary medicine type things, a lot of science. I'm a homeschool mom with 3 children. One's in college, one's in high school, one's in middle school. And I wanted to create this little video to help a lot of my students. I teach a lot of online classes with graphing. So here goes. We're going to go through all of the components of graphing. Really quickly, we're going to focus on line graph, but we're going to run through all of them just so you have a base to know the differences. Now, the 3 main types of graphs are a pie chart or a circle graph, same thing. And that's used to show a percentage of a whole. So if you have a whole group of something, you want to show a percentage. So if you have a group of students and you want to show how many students like pizza, how many students prefer hamburger, how many students like hot dogs, you can make a little pie chart and give percentages to show pieces of the whole. Now, bar graph is something we use to simply compare amounts. It's a simple graph. It has an X and Y axis. So it's going to be the square that we're used to seeing in a graph. And it's just used to compare amounts. A line graph is really the science graph that we know and love and talk about a lot in science. And it's used to show changes in information. A lot of research in science goes over time. And this gives us change over time or change as something else changes. We're measuring over a period of change. So that's an important thing that we use a lot. Here's a quick example of that pie chart or circle graph. It's just parts of a whole. So there's a favorite sport. Out of your group of 100, 40% of those people like soccer, 30% like basketball. In your school, if we did a survey of 100 students, then maybe 25% of them like math, 30% of them like language arts. That's all a pie chart is, or circle graph. Now, when we talk about a bar graph or a line graph, we have some parts, okay? There's a title. We always need a title because we're publishing this graph for someone to know the information we've collected. And so we're making this beautiful picture of information for other people to be able to observe and read and use. And so we need to title it. It needs to be a nice published copy. It needs to have an appropriate title to tell people what they're looking at. There is an independent variable that is controlled by the experimenter. Okay, it can be time, can be dates, can be temperature, can be weights, whatever it is we're controlling. That goes on the x-axis, that bottom line, that horizontal line, and it is what we control. Now, what we're measuring is going to be the dependent variable. Okay, that's going to go up the y-axis or up the vertical axis, and that's going to change. Now, so we're going to measure the thing that we measure. The thing that changes is going to go up the vertical or y-axis. Now, when we have those x and y-axis, we need them to have a scale. So if we're measuring days of the week, that's going to be our scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we need a label. So this is days of the week. These numbers represent days of the week. And then if we're measuring weights, say weights up the y-axis, then we need 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds. Okay, depending on what we're doing, and we need to label that. So not only do we need the numbers, we need to know, is this pounds, is this kilograms, is this inches? What are these numbers that we have going? Now, here is an example of a bar graph. Okay, we're going to label and number the x and y axis appropriately. Now you have this nice little square they've given you, but if you just have a big sheet of graph paper, make sure you leave yourself room on the edges to write. You need room for a title, you need room for a label on the y-axis, you need room for a label on the x-axis. Okay, so leave yourself some room. Don't try to smash it all up in the corner. That's not necessary. So this particular chart of information we have is how many hours did we study and what grade did we get for those hours of study. All right, so what's the very first thing we're going to do? one of the easiest things, you can do this last after you've kind of assessed the information, but if you do it first, you won't ever forget it. So you won't ever lose those points on your grade for missing that, okay? So grades increase as study hours increase. That's what our information tells us. If you study 0 hours, you get a 20%. If you study 10 hours, you get 100%, okay? So we know that from the information. The grades increase as study hours increase. That can be a good title for our bar graph. So we're going to make our x-axis across the bottom, and we're going to space it out equally because we want the information to look the same all the way across. We don't want to shove it all up on one side and then leave the rest of it blank. Or we don't want to string it way out across and have a bunch of space in between. It needs to be nice and even. Now, we put 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. This is a 20 by 20 grid that we have. So we spaced them out every 3 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that correct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of information we need to put on there. We have 20 spaces. So if we go every 3rd one, that spaces it out nicely. And that is the independent variable. That is the thing we're controlling. Okay, now the dependent variable, the thing that we're measuring, okay, goes up that y-axis. So that's the grade. We have a label, grade, and we have a number scale, 10 to 100. Okay, so that is our dependent variable. We've got a scale, we've got a label, and it's spaced out very evenly as we go up. Now, we're going to put them both together. So we have our hours of study across the bottom, across our x-axis, our grade going up the y-axis or the vertical side. And then we just put in our little boxes because these are our bar graphs. So we're making bars. So if you get a 0, you get a 20. If you study 2 hours, you get a 60. If you study 4 hours, 70. See how it reads across? This is this line. This is this line. If you get all the way to 10, you get all the way to 100. Okay, so that's a bar graph. We're just making bars to compare data. And that's what we have. So let's look at a line graph. Okay, let me see. Nope. Here's our line graph. Bacteria growth over 6 days. Where did I come up with that title? I looked at my chart. I have numbers of days. I have numbers of bacteria. On day 1, we had 4 bacteria. On day 6, we have 200 bacteria, and it's growing over 6 days. Easy title. It describes it well. That's a good title for us. Now, same thing, right? The thing we're controlling is the number of days. So that goes across the x-axis. And again, we had 6 pieces of data. We have 20 spaces. So we went every 3rd one, spaced it out nice and levelly, labeled it number of days. That's our independent variable. So then we're going to go to our y-axis. Okay, that's the thing we're measuring. So every day at the same time, we're going to measure the number of bacteria we have. So this is a little bit harder because it goes from 4 all the way to 200. So I spaced them for 10, so 20, 40, so each little line is 10, but we're all the way down at 4. So that first dot's going to be way down on the bottom. But it's the best we could do with this space. If I had a bigger piece of graph paper, we could extend it out a little longer. But this is all we have. Now, I went in and used my data on day 1. Okay, I had 4 bacteria. So it's way down here on the bottom of the graph. And that's not accurate, but we don't have enough room to make it super accurate. And then day 2, we had 16. So we're right under the 20. Day 3, we had 40. So now we can actually see it. Day 4, we had 80. Day 5, we had 100. And day 6, we went all the way up to 200. Okay, now it's a line graph, so we have to plot our data points, and then we're going to use a ruler to make very straight lines. Okay, you don't want to have wiggly lines all over your paper. Again, you're publishing this for someone else to read. So you want your work to be very neat and very well done and very easy to read. So we can see a trend over time. Okay, that's what these line graphs do. They usually give us a trend over time or over an area of change. A lot of times it is time, because that's what we do, is we measure over time. And so this is an appropriately presented graph. We have a title, we have a scale on the x-axis, we have a label for that scale. So we know what 1 is, we know what 2 is. We have a scale on the y-axis, on that vertical, and that's the thing that we're measuring. So we've got a scale with the numbers, and then we've got a label for that scale, number of bacteria that's happening. All right, so some take-home points. Always have a title. Always check your x-axis. Make sure you have a good even scale, a good descriptive label to tell us what's going on there. Y-axis, same thing. Have a good even scale and a good descriptive title. Use color. Color is beautiful in graphs. We're looking at it. We're making a visual presentation. It needs to be colorful. It needs to be neat. It needs to be well presented. Right? Use a ruler to draw those lines. Don't freehand them. It doesn't look good. You're sciencey. You're making a science, math and science thing. You want it to be precise, and you want people to think you did a good job on it. And if it's messy, even if your information is correct, people aren't going to take you serious. So make sure you're doing a good job on that. Okay? This is data that you've collected or that you've found, and you're publishing that for people to view and to make it easy to read. So make it detailed, make it clear, make it concise, make it neat. I hope you've learned something.